when the Game Awards nominations came out, I was laughing because I was like, man, I don't even want to acknowledge this nonsense. Then we find out all this other stuff. Then the game is, a game comes out. They nominated for debut indie game, Megabonk, and the developers like, nah, man, I've been publishing games under different, names, and this is not my first debut. So they pulled that and everything. But I've told you all this before, right? That a lot of people are status-driven gamers. In their minds, the value of a game is in the status that they perceive that the game actually has. You feel me? If the game doesn't carry some status like exclusive or whatever it is, the game is not prestigious enough for them. The game could be great in many cases, but status is a big deal. One user of such, or somebody who publicly actually, leads me to believe that this is how they prefer their gaming. I mean, there could be variation, but this is, what I observe. And I could be wrong, but this is what I observe. Is Nib95. Nib95 writes this particular tweet. He says, "This is the only major upcoming Xbox published game I can see with a chance to break the 13-year streak of no Xbox console exclusive being nominated Game of the Year at the Game Awards." Notice the language. It's no Xbox and then console exclusive. You know what? Do you see what that is? Xbox console exclusive. You see that? You see that? Do you see that? Now think about this with me, ladies and gentlemen. Xbox console exclusives aren't exclusive. They're just, not on PlayStation yet or something like that. That's one. Two, you have to qualify that because you could say Xbox game, but when you say Xbox game, what happens is the worldview, right? That freaking Death Stranding 2 has been nominated and is now being associated with Sony will fall apart. Because y'all know that Death Stranding 1 is no longer a PlayStation game because Kojima bought the rights. But Death Stranding 2 was published by PlayStation, hence it's now a PlayStation console exclusive that is now getting the Game Award nomination. Do you see how the status has to actually shift to make the, so-called prestige, be accepted in the public discourse? Remember how everybody backed away like it was a freaking hot potato when Death Stranding 1 made its way to Xbox? They were like, yeah, yuck. Those are your status-driven gamers. For them, the game has to be of some kind of thing that they can tag. And it's all perception and it's all nonsense. Because I'm not going to play Death Stranding 2. I mean, again, you got to look at me and say, well, VG is kind of weird with his game selection. I won't touch it. They'll give it to me for free, and I'll be looking at it in my library going, nice. And then when I want to make a video about it, I'll probably download it and probably, run around and then fire it off and uninstall it. Not interested. That's the crazy thing. Is the game. And then, people are talking about Jeff Keighley and how he would go ahead and, do whatever, he wants to in terms of, Kojima and all the above. Whatever. I don't care. Infinite Umbra, you responded, Shout out to Infinite Umbra. He said, "I laugh at this narrative sometimes, and it seems to be making the rounds again. And it's like some of you are saying, if a game doesn't win Game of the Year, the game isn't good enough or something, when we know that isn't true. It's a status-driven mindset." You see, Nib said, nobody's saying that. A game can be good, great and not get a GOTY nomination. Do you think PlayStation fans think Yote is not good? LOL. But there's usually strong correlation in games that win set awards and highest quality. Obviously, gamers want the very best games possible. No, Nib, that's not true. When freaking Baldur's Gate 3 came out busted with its Act 3, and they did not optimize for its co-op, claiming that the Series S, that right there is already a big problem that you should and you must acknowledge. That it's not the case. This guy, man, do you play status or do you play video games? Infinite Umbra says, "I disagree. I believe some are definitely saying / inferring that." He is, Umbra. He is. He just doesn't want to openly admit it because he makes these long characterizations of all the awards that these exclusives win. And then he associates third-party, publisher games for PlayStation, such as the console exclusive, that will get things like, Game of the Year nominations or win Game of the Year, such as Bloodborne. I don't know if you guys have seen his list. He made a list one time, and I commented under. I'm like, this is all for status. This does not have anything to do with anything. Talking about Bloodborne. Oh, look at Bloodborne. But then when From Software developed Elden Ring won Game of the Year, doesn't even acknowledge it. Yeah, that's how we know that that's what you think. Some I've known to be fighting the console war in good fight for a long while. In fact, many PlayStation fans are arguing that Yote should have been nominated. It's a sense of entitlement I've long seen with them being real. That's not to say the game isn't worthy, but still, strong correlation or not, we know there are generationally great games that have never won Game of the Year. So to me, pointing out Microsoft hasn't had a Game of the Year winner in 10 years seems bad faith and definitely leaning towards the view that they don't put out games that are good enough to qualify. That's right there is my thumbnail. Because this is what they do. Infinite Umbra, I'm sure you grant me your blessing, or I'm sure you won't be against me using that big, huge, sensible, logical statement as my thumbnail. Please forgive your boy as I am taking the liberty at this current moment to craft this thumbnail. In fact, let me give you guys a view of what it is that I'm doing. I'm going to go ahead and snip it over here. I'll use a snip tool so I can be a little petty in my markers. Snip tool gives you access, so I'm going to just clip it over here. Infinite Umbra, and I'm going to go ahead and copy it and slap it on a black background over here. But this is exactly what these cats are doing. They'll sit there and they'll talk about gaming and talk about all this stuff, and the perspective is just so warped at the end of the day. You wonder and you ask yourself, are these cats really here to game, or are these guys really here to just, talk about mundane stuff? And that's exactly where the problem is overall, is you have to hold a big mirror to their arguments, because if you don't, they'll run away from here and they'll start saying some of the weirdest and bizarre stuff ever in the whole wide world. It's kind of like this, I don't know what it is. I think, like he said, it's an entitlement. If the game does not meet, that's it. That's thumbnails done. The game does not meet some kind of a weird criteria, right? Then it seems like the game for them is not really a big deal. They're all shouting Xbox no goatee, Xbox no goatee. And guys, you know what's even funny? It's the calendar. They're actually following the calendar. Do you know that this is following the calendar? you know what? I'm going to tweet it. They are so predictable. It's so predictable. In fact, you can't miss if you predict the PlayStation fanboy. I'm telling you, you will land it. With precision. And the crazy thing, ladies and gentlemen, is when you actually think about it, right? This whole theme, right, of Xbox, not having a Game of the Year, blah, 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 blah. It's just so funny. Like, it's just so funny at the end of the day. I will bet you, right, that at this particular moment, ladies and gentlemen, right, that these folk, let me not place bets. Let me not place bets. But that's what we're seeing. You talk to me in the comment section. Let me know if I'm crazy. Peace out.